Bargaining Dr. Sultan Al Jaber, who, of course, attracted a lot of criticism in the build-up to the event. By nature of that, he's the boss of ADNOC, and there were accusations about whether he was trying to cut deals on the side for the oil-rich state. But more importantly than that, Dan, Dr. Sultan has delivered what he thinks is a very strong deal in many parts, in the way of the substance, but also in the message it sends out as well. And it was over the messaging in the final communique, the final draft, that actually there was so much contention as well. But let's give us your analysis now, Dan.
Well, Steve, what we're watching here is an historic moment for the UAE and its hosting of this COP28 event. You heard the words there from Dr. Sultan Al Jaber. Together we have confronted reality and stepped the world in the right direction. What we have seen unveiled in the UAE for the first time in history, the UN climate talks addressing the need to stop burning fossil fuels. The climate optimists might actually say that this COP28 indeed marks the beginning of the end for the fossil fuel era. Of course, there will be others who will say that that is completely fanciful, perhaps even irresponsible, but this is a significant step forward. And of course, it has really been a long and at times controversial road for Dr. Sultan Al Jaber and the UAE, the first fossil fuel producer to host a climate conference. Of course, he said he wanted to deliver a COP of action, and in his belief, the text in this document does that. So let's go through exactly what has been revealed out of this COP conference. The final wording on fossil fuels is this. It says, and I quote, "Transitioning away from fossil fuels in energy systems in a just, orderly and equitable manner, accelerating action in this critical decade so as to achieve net zero by 2050 in keeping with the science." It's a significant step forward. It's not phase out. It's not even phase down. But this is an agreement that will work for all parties as we've seen it being adopted, for the global north and for the global south. And importantly, an agreement that also sets the framework and the agenda for all COP conferences to come, including in Azerbaijan as soon as next year. Of course, this agreement will not appease everyone. I think that's very obvious. It's already been called strong on signals, but weak on substance, with loopholes and opt-outs that are going to require years to close and more negotiations to shape in the future. But nevertheless, this COP has delivered. It has included fossil fuels for the first time in its history. Again, this was the first COP where oil and gas has actually had a seat at the table. And now the onus of responsibility falls upon that industry and all of those parties mentioned in this document to deliver on their words and turn them into actions. This is a COP where we've also seen significant developments beyond the scope of just fossil fuels as well. $83 billion in new financial commitments being announced, and climate financing has really played a central role in this conversation as well. Again, this is the first COP where we've seen the private sector and business actually having a seat at the table as well, contributing to those conversations around shaping solutions to the global climate crisis. Again, 130 nations here signing up to triple renewables and double energy efficiency as well. And of course, an agreement to phase down coal and new coal plants. That was, of course, a very hard sell for countries like India and China, which are still heavily dependent on coal in the energy mix throughout the course of the transition. Again, oil and gas companies stepping up to tackle big issues like methane for the first time as well. And the contribution that we've seen from the oil and gas sector also adds pressure on other hard to decarbonize sectors to do more to bring about really meaningful climate action here. So, as I said, this is an historic moment. Dr. Sultan Al Jaber delivering a text that has the support of all parties. And as I said before, now the onus of responsibility is for these stakeholders to turn these words into action.
Dan, we appreciate the